Pastor Chris, who's been with us all along and been great insight into the topics that we're discussing, but also Katie, who is, I don't want to get this right, who is the Director of Ministry Systems here at the Tree. And she's going to share a little bit about what she's experienced in this area as well. So let's go ahead and jump right in, friends. I'm excited to talk about this, and we'll jump right in. So I've titled this specific discussion Full Course Service. And the reason that I did that is because I think it gives us a better, more full understanding of what it looks like to have not simply areas of service that we have, but a lifestyle where we're fully serving in every capacity of our lives. So just like when you go to a restaurant and you may have one course and it's great, you might enjoy that, but when you go to maybe a fine dining restaurant or you have an experience like that, when you get that full meal, it feels very complete. In the same way in our own lives, when we get that full experience of really living out service in our everyday, it feels more fulfilling and more complete in our lives. And so we're going to kind of talk along those lines. So, let's jump right in. So why is a lifestyle of generous serving the win for our lives? And I'll start with you, Miss Kate.
Jesus exemplified what serving is. And I look back to think about even how God introduced man to earth. And the whole reason that he introduced us to earth was to help keep dominion, take care of what the earth is providing for us. And so I just sit there and think, like, we were completely designed to serve in those ways in every capacity from the very beginning. It's our design. And then Jesus came and showed us exactly what serving is. So we can find fulfillment in it when we do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great insight. What do you think about Chris?
I was going to say it fulfills the two greatest commandments that Jesus gives us, to love God and to love each other. Well, how do we love each other? We serve each other. We give for the greater good of other people in our lives. And so I think service fulfills that role.
How do we, so even if it is a natural thing that God has designed us to do, how do we know if we are having success in those areas or winning in those areas? And what does that kind of look like in the sense of our everyday?
I think it's really tied to the Spirit and how the Spirit's moving in your life. So there are very systematic ways that I think that you can put serving into your life. You can plan to get up every morning and you're going to make breakfast for your spouse every single morning. That's a very systematic way to do it. But I think also, too, it is dependent on listening to what the Spirit has to say and allowing Him to kind of show opportunities to serve other people. Yeah, sure. What is going on in your coworker's life that you might be able to bless them in some way.
So. Yeah, for sure. So looking at it even more in a practical sense of that there are opportunities every day, similar to what we talked about with prayer, but it's going to be our awareness and our receptiveness to the Holy Spirit as He's moving in and through those specific things. Do you have anything to add, Katie?
Yeah, I think it's a choice when you talk about doing systematically. It's taking that time to say, like, I'm going to prioritize what things look like in my life. So when you say I'm prioritizing my time with God first, well, then what's next, or what is God leading you in that? So when you're making it just a normal system to not look at what you want from that day or what you want out of everything, but how can you make things better for somebody else, it then turns into what your time looks like for yourself, even, like what you get from it.
For sure.
So good.
Sure. Yeah.
It's almost a tithe of your time and your energy for other people.
Right. So on paper, that looks fantastic. But if we're honest with ourselves, if we were to actually live that out, there are challenges to that, right? I mean, every day there's so many different things that are going on, especially in our kind of Americanized world culture that we live in. We're just constantly busy. So what are some of the challenges that you guys have faced, and how have you kind of worked through overcoming those specific challenges?
I would say for me, one of the greatest fears is getting myself into something that I can't see through, or overcommitting to something, or the fear that being generous to someone. So let's just say, for example, someone I know is hurting. If I give them time, is that going to lead to them needing more of my time? Yeah. And so it's not necessarily that one thing that I would do would be a big deal. It's that, is this going to instigate more things for me to do? And so overcoming that own fear in our minds is one thing that we have to overcome. So it's not always the practical things of being busy. There is an element of, if I give to this person, are they going to want more than what I have to give? And I think that's a very real thing that we have to overcome.
For sure, because then that almost restricts us in the sense of even investing in that to begin with, you know, because capacity-wise, we might say, like, I have nothing to give, you know what I mean? I'm taking my kids here, or I'm taking care of my mother here, you know, all the things that we would do in and out throughout our day. And to say, like, now this other person is now, or persons or family or whomever is going to need more of that time. So how do we make that work for sure? I think that's a very legit fear that we all have. What about for you, Katie?
I find that I struggle sometimes, like kind of like what you were saying, is you don't know how much longer or how much more you're going to have to give. So you're like, hey, in this moment, I know I can make this choice. But I think that's where I think things through is like, once I know I'm going to do something, then I'm fully committed, whatever it is. And so it's like, okay, what is this commitment? I'm fully invested in it type of thing. So it's more of those, it's not a checklist. It's not a one and done. It's a kind of a project in a sense, like, or no different than a job. You show up one time, you work the hours you're supposed to. And I think a lot of times I take it personally as far as like, this is now my job or duty if I'm going to do this, and I will weigh out what the costs are first. So I think it's one of those things that I'm hindered by not necessarily being obedient sometimes in those ways, that I'm like, oh, I don't have time for this, when if God's calling me to do it and reacting in that time, I'm using all those other things of like, can I do this to my fullest ability, rather than looking at it from like, God's equipping me to do it. It has nothing to do with what I can give or what I'm going to do. It just following through. I think following through with that obedience and like when I'm called to do it, not necessarily like searching for something to do. You know, that's the difference.
And Tiff made such a great point when we were talking about prayer last week. She said, like, God is not only the initiator of that, but He's the energy source. He's the one who helps me empower through those. And I think, would you guys agree that that's the same thing with serving?
Absolutely.
It's like you step in obedience, like you were saying, God is the one who makes that work out in the way that it does.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of times, in those moments when I've been obedient in those situations, even with that fear, God has oftentimes come through. Now, whether it be equipping me to have the ability to say, hey, listen, I can't, the next time they come, or if there is where it becomes a codependent situation, God has enabled me to have good conversations there and actually get the people the real help that they need. So I think if we would just be willing to go, okay, God, I'm going to be obedient here, and then you come to the next thing and you go, okay, I'm going to be obedient
keep
here.
Giving it to God.
And you keep trusting God with it. I think that's the best way to kind of overcome that and walk into those situations where we're both being faithful, but we're also realizing our limitations, because we do have limits. We have limited time. We have a lot of people that we want to be generous with, including our families, including our coworkers. I mean, our extended families. You think about the number of people and relationships we have every day. It can be daunting at times.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point, I think, when it comes to trying to know boundaries in service, because I think we think, oh, we're Christians, so we should just bend over backward for every scenario that comes up. And that's an amazing heart. You know, it's a great place to start, because it is in that humble position. But at the same time, we have to know our limits. We have to know our boundaries, and we have to be willing to step in and say, when do I need to have a conversation with whatever the situation is going on, you know, that I can push pause and say, something else needs to happen here, because I can't, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I have oftentimes, and I've had instances where I felt, I'll see a car on the side of the road and I feel led to stop. That is something that I would highly discourage my wife from doing. So like she has to be discerning in that moment. So it's not just a carte blanche, like I'm gonna step into every service need that I possibly have. But at the same time, I think it starts with that heart and that willingness to go, whatever you want me to do, God, to bless other people, I'll be willing to do that. But and also understanding, like, there are going to be moments when it's not our place to do that. So like I said, with the whole instance, it may be okay if I stop on the side of a road at nighttime when someone's stuck, where I don't know that I would feel comfortable, or nor I don't know that my wife would feel comfortable in fulfilling that role. Now, she can still help by calling and say, hey, there's a car on the side of the road that might need help. Like there's a lot of different ways that we can serve in moments like that, but having the heart to engage in those moments might look different, but it's the heart that matters first, and then you navigate those different circumstances, I guess.
The discernment. The discernment portion of it is the part that you grow in terms of maturity and trusting in God and listening to his voice kind of speak to you in those moments, you know. But yeah, for sure. Kate, do you have anything to add to that?
No,
Okay.
I agree completely.
Well, let's talk a little bit, because we are talking specifically to groups, and this is just important to me. It's a value of mine. I want to talk about what it looks like to serve within your group, because it's a perfect opportunity in my mind to look across the room and to see somebody who has a need and who's expressed that need within the group. So when that's happened in your guys' specific groups, how do you typically respond, and how can the group help in those moments to kind of support? And I'll start with you, Miss Kate.
I think in general over the years we revolve around food a lot, so I feel like that's our first thing, is we like help eliminate that. It's amazing to me, just as a mom and family and everything, how much that does help. When we think about taking that off of somebody's plate in general, but like when you think
right?
yeah literally, but when you think about the time commitment that takes, or the planning process, or needing to figure out whatever, like just having that there, it alleviates a lot of things, even if it's just gift cards, like to know that you can make a quick meal happen at the convenience of that. We've helped people move, like when they've just needed extra set of hands, things have broke down, we've helped provide to help their kids go to different youth events, even like just different things where we've collected things, we've gone to help, you know, do different things with their kids, family, and then just praying together. Like that's the biggest thing, that when we take the time to check in throughout the week, like sometimes that's the biggest thing that you're like, that takes your time. Like that's an act of service in itself, of just checking in with people and just seeing how they're doing and things. So
for sure, those are great points. Christopher?
Yeah, I would say it's the same thing for our group. It's being purpose to reach out when we know someone's hurting, being purpose to provide for when a need comes up, and that is partly vulnerability on the people that need help,
right.
And them being willing to say, hey, this is where I'm struggling right now, this is where we have need, and it's partly on the group's ability to go, we're absolutely going to do what we can to help that need. And I don't think the group has to figure it out on their own. So like if that's something that is bigger than the group can provide, there are a lot of resources at the church that can help with that. So always having those good dialogues with you, Pastor Brandon, and then working within a group together. There have been things that we've done where we've kind of branched together to take care of needs, but then we also have had moments where particular people within our group can fulfill the need that person has, and they step up in that moment. But so really as group leaders, you get to facilitate the care for those people, and allowing the group to not for you as a group leader to care for the group in and of itself, but allowing the group to care for each other. So I've really found that's been such a blessing in our group, of seeing other people step up to care for the needs of the other group members.
Yeah,
so
that mutual ownership really is the ideal system when a need arises, like that the leader doesn't feel the whole weight of the responsibility of doing that, but that the group entirely, even as both of your examples were given, that the group is both or all dealing with, you know, that need that comes up for sure. So you bring up a good point too, Chris, though, that there are times that we need to express need. And I think that can be even sometimes a challenge, because if we're always in the mentality of I'm just going to serve and serve on top of, you know, whatever, you know, and it's always my angle of it, sometimes being served is such a blessing too. And so we need to bring up those needs and be willing to share if there is something that does arise. So, well, good stuff, guys. Well, let's kind of finish the conversation a little bit around the idea of you guys sharing some personal testimonies of examples where you've been blessed in a serving opportunity, and then we'll kind of finish out the conversation.
Sure. I'm trying to pick just one. My personality is really bent towards I get life out of helping other people. So if I can show up and help with something, or if I can help somebody move, or if I can stop on the side of the road and just say, hey, do you need help with something? All have been circumstances that I've experienced where I've been able to do that. But then also too, my time here serving the staff, when I was doing IT stuff, some of my favorite moments is when I've been able to help someone accomplish their job. So my heart just kind of gravitates toward that. And so like I get opportunities every single day to live that out, and I guess that's not an specific example.
No, that's fine. No.
But I find blessing in seeing other people come to life and be happy. And so like, not that it's always about making people happy, because I've also found blessing in challenging people to something they didn't want to hear. And so that is an act of service when you're willing to make yourself uncomfortable to confront something. That's an act of service.
Yeah.
They may not see it at the moment, but seeing the life that comes from even those such circumstances.
Yeah. It was so key when you said like that you operate in the gifts that God has given you and the things that you love to do, because I think for me personally, I try and force some things sometimes, like I need to be serving all of these ministries in the community. I need to be doing something, purposeful in every single area or every single opportunity that's available, and then I'll have some guilt or whatever and that I'm not engaging in those ways. But it's so key that you find what it is that God has assigned you for and then operate within that. And it could be simple everyday things, if that's what gives you joy, and fulfillment, or it could be a ministry that's in the community that you can reach out to and fulfill through that ministry. But
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, what about you, Miss Kate?
I completely agree with like kind of functioning in your talents and what God's designed you to do. And I just reflecting back, like I've always had opportunities to be involved in something that was volunteer work for the most part. So growing up as a kid, between Girl Scouts or 4-H even, like we do a lot of community involvement. And it could be little things, just making something for nursing homes or whatever. But when I reflect on that, I find that I have fine-tuned that I invest in the things, my time and my things, to serve back to what I know God's designed me to do. And what I find is that there's like-minded people that I'm connected with, or I actually get connected with somebody else that needs to be a part of the same organization, like to complete the serving body. We can't have a whole bunch of armpits, as they said before, and function. We need different parts to make a complete serving body. And I have found that if I just embrace and think about using my time and my talents the way God's designed me to, and the way I think, that it's an asset to whatever it is I'm giving it to. So serving here, like I tried that many years ago where I was serving in multiple ministries on one Sunday. And what I learned from that was like, you can do too much. And like, and it's not a help. It's not a help to the other team members, because you're like, well, no, I'm sorry, I can't help you because I got to go do this one. And now that team's hurting. So like, I think that just knowing what fits for you and just really investing with where you're at to be a part of that body, I've gained so much. Like I gained so much with just helping different things like that and being invested in those ways, and it's looked different in every season. So just because I was involved in something when I was younger doesn't mean I'm still involved in that now, because I've moved on, or life things have changed. Circumstances have happened in life that has made me go, I want to be a bigger part of that, or I want to use what God brought me through to help somebody else or whatever. So I'm open to the idea that I could be called to serve in many different ways later, and that I might have to take off one hat now to put on a different one later.
Yeah.
That's great stuff. Both of you guys, wonderful stuff, and I'm so excited for the groups to be able to explore this, to talk about it more, and to have this kind of foundation to kind of build off in terms of engaging with their groups. So guys, go ahead at this time and start discussing those questions, and I look forward to hearing all the stories that are going to come out and how you're going to grow in this next season of service.